pjnet.tv. It's 9 o'clock now. Ooh, 9:01. We're running late. Hey, listen, it's worth the wait. Jake McCandless, the legend, is in our green room waiting to tell us all about, well, stuff. And it's all true. Okay. And we're running our bumper. We're recording. Heck, we're streaming. It looks healthy there, chat room and all that. So what we're going to do, starting now, is count it down to Studio 8. Well, good evening. Welcome. This is pjnet.tv. I'm Coach Prasick, and you know what? I'm the happiest guy in the world. I just get to sit here and talk to brothers and sisters in Christ night after night after night. And tonight, we have a legend, and he's got something to share with us. If I can get my... You know how your mouse sometimes gets sluggish? You know, is that because the mouse battery needs replacing, or is that because something else is wrong? But anyway, every time, what is it, the second Tuesday of every month, Jake McCandless comes and chats with us. But this time, Jake, you're not on your cell phone in the parking lot where you were doing a Bible study or something. Did I hear you say you haven't used your studio for 2 months?
I have not streamed in 2 months. Actually,
what is wrong with you?
Over 2 months.
What's wrong with you, man? I mean, come on.
So my wife teaches school, and it really happened. My first writers conference, Michelle Cox spoke, and she was sharing about her book at the time, just 18 summers, and really hit me that with your kids, you've only got 18 summers. I think you really only have 12 because, pretty much after 12 or 13, they don't want to spend any time with you anyway. No. So, and we're kind of at that mark. So we have really tried to just maximize our time. I don't, I joke, I have multiple jobs, but I don't have a real job. And then Amanda my wife being off for the summer. So we make the most of it. They travel with me and those things. So I laid down the streaming for the last couple months. We pick it up this Friday. So I'm glad I get to dust the things off tonight.
Yeah, well, at least it's still working. We'll get a chance to test it all out. So, your microphone was way out of whack earlier. And, just your countenance declares that you've recently had an anniversary. Speaking of 18 or 19 or something.
Yeah, 19 years as of August 2nd.
Continuously?
So, I think so.
To the same woman? I mean, really?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so hitting 20 next year.
You don't look old enough to be married 19 years.
Well, we got married pretty young, but still not that young.
I saw the picture, and you, we get older. Things happen.
Oh, and so, being the great planner, actually we had something planned, didn't work out for our anniversary. And so, but we both had day off to hang out. And so we went to a retro arcade, spent 4 or 5 hours, took a break for lunch, came back and just played these old school. Neither one of us are gamers at all, but it's set up like a late 80s, early 90s arcade. And we had a blast doing that. And you just paid like one cover charge to get in, and you don't no quarters, none of that. And so, got to really dive into actually got to make it a couple levels into Pac-Man, unlike in the past.
Yeah. So. Yeah. The 3 I remember, the ping pong game. I mean, that's the most rudimentary. I mean, I could write that program in 10 minutes. And then the spaceship thingy, that was a good one. But all right, yeah. You didn't listen to any Olivia Newton-John or anything, did you? That's before your time anyway, isn't it?
No. Before my time.
Yeah, back when music was good. I used to play her music when it came out. I mean, it was on the radio. When music was a vinyl disc platter with a needle.
Yeah, I remember seeing some around.
Yeah, you got to get that needle right between the grooves. I mean, it's an art. On a more serious note, I see that you have recently attended a youth minister retreat of some kind.
It's coming up. Speaking at a retreat coming up September the 17th, and it's cool. It's all day long. Actually, Friday night, Saturday, training for for student pastors, student leaders, really aimed at volunteers and bivocational student leaders. And so be doing a breakout session on reverse engineering parenting, but looking at ways to help our kids and families stand firm. And so really excited to have that opportunity to speak to leaders about that. I did youth ministry for several years and was really just focused on the here and now. And I really think back the first youth group I worked with, and I poured into that group. It was great. It was my first year of college. That first summer, I started in May. I didn't have a place to stay for the summer, so they set up a travel trailer in the parking lot of the church, and so I lived there with the students for the summer. And but those guys that I worked with, they were the first wave to go into Iraq this second time, and so I think of the things that we were talking about and doing in youth group, and then just 8-9 months later, they're in Iraq facing what they've faced, and they've done great, but they've continued to battle, with what their experience is and those things. And I didn't look past high school for them, and I think, and so that's one of the things that through Stand Firm, especially as we launched the Stand Firm Parents podcast, and trying to really dive into is let's think past right now. How can we give them a faith that lasts? And so excited to have that opportunity just to share with some leaders.
Now, how long ago was it, Jake, when you were in youth ministry?
Well, last year was 05. So 99 to 05. But where I pastored until 2016, we were very focused on youth, children, young adults. And so I wasn't quite in the trenches, but I was close. So, it's been something, but I look at it now though, I almost feel like high school, it's just so impossible. I mean, to me, it's a very impossible task that our student leaders have, youth leaders have with the technology. I was doing it right when texting is starting. The kids are teaching me to text, when I'm doing it full time. And then, now just, then we would talk about how much, peers were around them, media was around, and how, we had them 1 hour a week and that was it, or, 2 at the most. And so I think it's a huge challenge today to do.
Well, you've been out of it for 15 some years at this point, but you're teaching a breakout session. Have you given any thought to what you're going to teach?
Well, it's hard to narrow it down because I'm diving into it with Stand Firm Parents, and so we're working through. My 9th episode comes out next Monday, and so I've been talking in these conversations, of course, diving into it myself. And the thing we focused on most there is getting students engaged on mission. Or number one is parents living out that mission, and then getting our students engaged as well. So definitely want to bring that in. But one of the things that really is on my heart right now is helping them discover truth. And so one of the things that we're doing, and so started a new endeavor, working, been talking about the Bible studies doing up here locally, and we've got a green light to do that on a larger scale here. And in that, we do what's called a discovery Bible study. We just open the Bible and read it and answer some basic questions on it. But what it's about is individuals around the circle, beginning to discover it themselves, and light bulbs come on, and then they can pick it up and they can take it, read it on their own, and have that same. And I've fallen in love with that, even though my really all my life it's been preaching and all those things. I just would put that aside and just see people have these light bulbs come on. It's crazy how you can just read one passage, talk about it in a circle, and it's not about people's opinions. It's what does this text say, and seeing those light bulbs come on, they know it deeper, and it's more personal than if they just hear someone preach it. And I think with our students, no matter what we pour into our children and teens now, they're going to have to make this faith their own at some point. And I think if we can get them discovering earlier themselves, that's going to help dramatically. And so I think that, and giving them a bigger story to live into, which is on mission. And so I think those two avenues, because I noticed one of the breakout session was actually on preaching to teens, and I'm looking at the opposite end of that of, hey, let's get them in the Word, guide them in the Word, let them discover it, because no matter what we preach and say to them, they're going to have to make it their own at some point. And if they can begin that while in our student ministries, in our churches, I think it's going to go a long ways.
Dick, you've, as I mentioned, you've been out of youth ministry for over 17 years, based on the math. Do you still have contact with any of the people that you were mentoring way back then? They're now in their 30s.
We do. We really do. And so, yeah, I mean, really from every place we've been, we've got students that we still are connect with. So where I pastored previously, I was there for 12 years, youth pastored there for 2.5, nearly 3 during that time. And so they got to come, get to be with those students as they continued on and into adulthood, getting married and those things. And so, yeah, it's cool to still have those relationships. And, I think how a lot of them have come back, more recently as they've kind of, gotten kids and those things and getting older. And they're like, maybe Jake wasn't as stupid as we thought, same thing as parents, that type thing. But yeah, no, it's good to be able to stay in touch. I wish it was in touch with a lot more. But and I think that's the heartbreaking thing. I go back to the student ministries I've led, the student ministries that were there when I was pastoring, and when you look at it, very few, at least actively, seem to be practicing their faith now. And I think that's another aspect of it. And one thing I think I think on all levels of ministry is understanding this small game approach. The idea of a remnant versus just reaching the masses. I think if you could pour in, do the Jesus thing, pour into a few, and then eventually you're going to get in the same numerical order. Where I was at, the last youth pastor was at a very small town, the lowest classification on size in Arkansas high school, and we still ran 80 to 120 students a week. But I wish I'd gone back and poured into 10 or 15 of them, 12, that'd been a perfect number. And, if you pour into 12 and in a year or two, they reach one, year or two, 2 years, 3 years, they all reach one. You're at that same number that you're running and not making the impact that you want. And so I think that remnant approach is, man, I'd sure go back and go that route.
Jake, I like your idea of the remnant, pouring into a few, investing.
Yeah.
I think it has merit, but I think it's hard to sell that because churches want numbers, sir.
It is. It absolutely is. But so I think I shared that I got a new opportunity. So I've been brought on through a missions group to be they call it a missionary church planter in my region where I live. And I had the chance to meet with the board the other day. And so it's been in the works, started August 1 officially. And August 1 met with the board and shared my vision. And one of the things I was asked in the hiring process was, they talked about one of them had formerly done this, had been a church planter, missionary. And one of the things that he said is that now when he shares the gospel with someone, it's like 1 in 100, best case scenario that someone believes. He said, just go back a few years ago and it was 1 out of 20. He said, Jake, what's the difference? And I think one of the differences is, you have basically in the past, he was calling people who had roots in the truth, roots in the church, roots in the scripture, calling them back to it, versus we're speaking into, 2 or 3 generations deep of out of church, being out of church. And so as I begin to share that, and that's one of the things driving how my approach is. And so I'll be sure, maybe we can share more about this in the future because we're just in the early stages of it. But we're actually creating an entity. Instead of just saying, hey, we're going to build a church and we're just going to invite people and do this, we're building an entity. The working title right now is the Epic Life Network. And my role is not, even though it looks like a pastor, looks like a church planter, calling myself a trainer. And we're training people to enjoy their faith, experience it on an everyday level, reach their neighborhood, and learn to follow Christ like the first followers of Christ. And that has been such a cool dynamic. I'm super excited about just approaching that. So my family's commitment is just to reach and not to worry about reaching the whole town, the whole region, even though that's our heart, is to just pour into the people around us, the people that's already in our circle of life that we're living, and then help other people do the same thing. And it's tough. I mean, you know, as in ministry, it's tough not to just want to run out there and do something big, go big and do that. But I'm hoping to do this in a way that I can turn around and say to somebody else, you don't have to go to seminary and do this. You don't have to feel like you know anything to do. You just simply love on the people around, pray for the people around you, cover them in prayer, care for them, you know, get out there and just connect and care. And then just share your story and just open the word and walk through it together. And so that's our approach. And so I was nervous because I felt like this, like you said, they want, of course, of the agency, they want to see numbers. They want to see what you're doing. And I'm coming before them and saying, hey, I'm only going to focus on the people around me. I'm going to pour into them. And then as I meet people outside of that, that would like to do the same thing, we're going to do that. And I said, you know, I think 3 or 4 years, it's going to be very slow. But what you have is you have adding, and eventually multiplying. And so that's what we're hoping for. And so, I've not only feel the conviction of taking on this small game remnant aspect, but am basically betting on it right now with my gig, with my livelihood. And so, but you're right. I mean, it is going against the grain, but we've got to do something against the grain. What we're doing ain't working.
I agree. You know, and you said a phrase a moment ago that would go over like a fart in the elevator. You know, you don't have to go to seminary. You know, I mean, this is the modality that we have grown into, whether it's intentional or just we stumbled into it and waywardly got lost. Yeah. But we've professionalized ministry to where we believe that the average everyday Christian, and this is a lot of what PJ Net's about, the everyday Christian, okay, isn't qualified. And you're speaking out, you sound like Jesus. You know, you're speaking out against the church culture, the church leadership, the way we've gone, but it's going to take a special organization to take people like you in. But I think if they do, it'll work because what we're doing.
Hey, glory to God that they have their own board. I have at least a year to get to run this way until I go before a review again, and we'll see what happens. So God has really been working on me. It's been just in a process, and so I'm not speaking necessarily against the church. I love the church. I have invested my life, 9 years of college and seminary, you know, and every bit invested in, you know, being a church guy and doing those things. But it's not about that. You know, I wouldn't trade my chance to go to seminary for anything, but it's just simply about opening the word and sharing. And I just love, so I sat down we've got a remnant. We've got a group that's already been meeting here long before this was in the works. And that's what we didn't want to change that dynamic. We didn't want to say, okay, we're going to be a church now. We're just like, no, we want to just continue to love you guys, pour into you and help you. And I got to sit down and say, okay, as, you know, pastor here, instead of saying, this is my vision, what is your dream? And so tomorrow night we meet and everybody's going to be sharing their spiritual dreams for their family and just for their lives. And the approach that I want to take is it's like, okay, this is what God is calling you to. How can I support you to do that? And it's taken me, it's like mind games. It's like a battle to get to that point for me. But you know, pastors are called to be equippers. And so I love being able to say I'm a trainer now, just helping other people like achieve their spiritual goals. And because when you have that, you're releasing individuals to go out and live out their calling that they can do and that they can do better than I can and come in touch with more lost people than I can. And I want to tell you, so I introduced that last week, just you know, basically the night before. It was laid on my heart. I said it, and it was such a mind-boggling moment for everybody in the room. They're like, what? I mean, someone really said, no one's ever asked me what I like spiritually dreamed. I've heard all kinds of visions for pastors and ministers, but no one's ever asked me. And I mean, I think about all of the guests you have on your show. Every one of them has a vision. And for the most part, churches have not gotten, you know, someone in a position to catapult them out and launch them, have not been able to do that. And that's what you're doing. And that should be for every church member. God has put us in contact with a nutritional shake business in town, which has opened their doors, which is really cool for us to have a neutral site also besides homes. And I'm meeting with them today, and they just talked about their whole business is it's about God. And I'm like, man, we need to come alongside you and support you rather than just asking what you can do for the church and the pastor. And so it's been a process, but I am so excited just seeing the fruits of it the last couple of weeks.
Well, if I had to describe what I think you're saying, is you are organizing cell groups.
Yes.
And
but missional because I think a lot of times we think cell groups or small groups, we think just doing a life together, which you do, but let's push one another to make disciples, to share, make disciples, and multiply out, which all small groups would say that, but I think that's, but yes, basically like the old cell model.
Yeah, and if you can knit those together, if you can interconnect them, which I don't know how that would happen, but if you could, you would form, and you used the word network a moment ago. You would spin a web of these cell groups, and they don't have to be necessarily in proximity. They could be anywhere. And the interesting thing, I learned this in sociology. It was called the social web, and it's the way we actually conduct our ordinary lives. You cannot move any portion of a web without moving all of it.
Yes.
So if one cell lights on fire,
yeah,
if they're interconnected, the rising tide would float all the boats, so to speak, to some, or at least that potential exists. Jake, you are one of these few people that I know that I could truly characterize as an idea a minute type person. You're always starting.
Somebody, my wife would say, yeah.
Always starting something new.
Yeah, I'm not finishing much of it, but this one I'm held accountable, so I got to finish it. And as you said, talked about multiple groups, and instead of just saying, hey, let's just go build a church and do that, my hope is once you go 2 or 3 layers deep of multiplication, you didn't have the desire to see each other. I mean, we're saying this in our group right now. We're like, oh, we don't want to multiply because we'll miss each other. And then that gives a longing for being together. And then you take it. I mean, we're in the Word. We're actively in the community. And so you have this emptying of yourself, and you need to be refueled. And everybody's just asking we need corporate worship, Jake. And I'm just kind of pushing it off till I can't push it off anymore. But I think one of the problems with COVID is people realized, I don't really need the Sunday morning service. We do need community. We do need worship. We do need, to not do this alone. But if we're not pouring ourselves out for the gospel, then we don't need to be refueled. If we're not leaning into community, then we don't need to be around other people. And I think that's why people haven't come back. They're like, why? I mean, if we could take it online and it not be necessary, why? And so my hope is to, over the next few years, in the trenches of the small game, is to eventually come around where the corporate gathering is needed and longed for rather than just something you do.
A minute earlier in the program, you mentioned that you were going to be restarting your podcast on Friday. Then later in the program, you said something about starting something on podcast Monday. Well, which is it?
It's Idea Minute. It's all of it. So every other Monday, a audio podcast drops everywhere podcasts are. Of course, iTunes and all that stuff. And it's called Stand Firm Parents, and the whole focus is on reverse engineering parents to help families have a faith that lasts. And so that's just started. It seems to be on the Stand Firm end. Lord's opening the doors for the focus on the family aspect of it. But we had our 2 weekly streaming shows we were doing. Thursday night I was teaching. Fridays we were doing interviews and just taking questions. And we've combined all that, and that's what starts Friday. We call it Stand Firm 360. And so every month there's a different theme, different topic. And so this month we're looking at Daniel 9, the prophecy of the vision of 70 weeks. And so this Friday I will teach live for 25-30 minutes. Take questions right after it. It's like a coach's press conference, after the game. And then we'll have two the next 2 weeks we'll have interviews of people who know a lot more about Daniel 9 than I do, and we used to do questions and then the guest, and now we're gonna have the guest on. I'll talk to him for 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up for everybody else, and we'll do that back to back. And then the final week we'll have a panel taking questions on that topic. We're also opening up there'll be a Facebook group, and along with it a book of the month. And so a lot going on, but it's actually streamlining to just being Fridays at noon Eastern every Friday. And so really excited, of course, to do that with Sherilyn, and we have David working behind the scenes. We got Lisa Gallington working with us now. She is our publisher for the blog, and she'll be part of the panel. Really cool. When I wrote Spiritual Prepper, at the same time, another part of the country, she wrote a book called End Time Prepper, and teamed us up on that. And so yeah, kind of a lot of things going on, but God's really seems to be leading towards focusing on families. I'm really not supposed to say, but I'm super excited about. I'm going to be part of a conference tour coming up. It looks like, and I'll just be able to focus just on that one subject in there. And so hopefully more about that will be released soon. Did promo pictures today. So anyway. For that, so yeah, teaser. But so God really seems to be doing that. But ultimately, where all the Stand Firm study and work is ended up is if you go to these passages of the talents, or the passage of the 10 minas, Luke 19 or wherever it's at, you read, and it's not just the person who held on to the talent or buried the mina. They're not the ones that please the Lord. Standing firm is not what the Lord wants us to do that. But the ones who are said, "Well done, good and faithful servant," are the ones who marched on, who invest. And so, we can't stop at stand firm. We've got to live epic, and that's the heart behind this. And so it seems like a million things going on, but they all do circle back to, hey, if we're going to be found faithful, we've got to be on mission.
Is all this stuff on your website, standfirmministries.com? Because I can't keep up with everything you just said.
It is in a roundabout way. Yes. Okay. Go to resources, and you can find the blogs and videos and podcasts. So if the links aren't broken, they're there.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, Jake, summer's over, and I'm glad to know that you're speaking to or teaching and sharing your experiences with other youth ministers along the way. And they need a retreat too.
They do.
Surely.
They do. And
I'm sure
I need to remember, hey, I've been out of the game for a long time, but I do want to share what I've learned.
Well, and the fact they had it in September, that tells me, yeah, summer's over. They need a break, and
yes,
you would know. Well, Jake, by the time you come back and see us this time next month, I'm sure you will have 20 more new ideas.
I hope not. I hope this sounds wild, but I feel like I've been on a sojourner for the last 6 years, and it's finally like clicking. It sounds terrible, but it's like, okay, finally getting that groove of this is where the direction I want you to go. And I think you probably, experienced that through this. There's so many different avenues. You're always wondering the next email, what's this going to be? What's this going to be? And I just kind of feel like, okay, this is a groove I can sit back and enjoy and stay in, I think.
Well, and you're getting older. It's time to settle down a little bit, and you're like your life is like being in a blender. I mean, it's just, but you've got a lot of energy, and Jake, I admire that, and I commend you for it. Not many that I know in ministry are willing to take the risks that you've taken, and I appreciate it, because I feel some of the things that you're sharing, and I have an urgency within me, probably driven by my age, but there needs to be a sense of urgency, and you said it, and it's profound. It may get you in trouble at times, but folks, we need to be honest and say what we're doing isn't working. Yeah. That doesn't mean we don't have hope, but positive change starts with a healthy dissatisfaction with the way things are. And you are that irritant, that I think, that salt that needs to be there. And I appreciate your bravery and your courage as the Lord leads you in ministry. And I can't wait.
Well, thank you. When I felt the call to ministry, Acts 2 broke my heart. when I begin to hear about the early church and look out here in America, what we, what church seemed to be. And I want to tell you, getting small and just trying to be genuine, man, I feel like I've last couple of weeks, or really before that, as we've been doing it, getting some taste of this Acts 2 thing may not be out of date. And and I really think that's where we all should long to be. And I'm having to say, hey, for over 20 years, everything I've done with my life, I think could have been done better if I just looked at the Word and how Jesus did it versus how the books I was reading told me to do it.
You said a lot. And we're committed to make disciples. And I think what we've substituted is we're making students.
Yeah.
And making students is not entirely bad, but if it's limited to that, then we're not really making disciples, or at least in the sense, on the scale and the scope that Jesus intended in the Great Commission. So, soldier, good luck, Godspeed. If you're unemployed when you come see us next month, we'll still have you. And
I really think I've got a year. So
okay.
Now after that, I might be. So
okay. Fear not, my man. Appreciate it, Jake. We love you, brother.
All right. Thank you.
Jake McCandless. He said a lot. I hope you heard that. I hope God speaks to your heart, because, gosh, we're fortunate to have so many wonderful team players here on pjnet.tv, and you're one of them. If you're watching this or listening to this, or if you're in our chat room, what we do here is we provide a platform for everyday Christians to share their walk with Christ. But for many of us, that requires some courage, some bravery that we may not feel we have. And so, reflecting on that, I would like to offer a challenge in the form of 2 questions. You ask yourself, what is the boldest thing that you have ever done in the kingdom of Christ? Maybe appear on pjnet.tv. Second question is, how long ago was that? And the challenge, of course, is to never be satisfied with either answer.